Hello to all you big children out there. Konnichiwa and welcome to the Tokyo Joshi Pod, your weekly dose of everything TJPW. I'm your host, Andy Zyke, and today we are back with another monthly bonus episode, the first in a couple of months, I think, and I'm squeezing it in right before the end of March. If you are new here, weekly Tokyo Joshi Pod episodes come out every Friday covering current events. I release these bonus episodes ideally once a month, although I have fallen off that wagon just a little bit. But these monthly bonus episodes cover a variety of different things. On this episode in particular, we're going to take a look back at my experience in Texas during Texas Stampede. This will be a very personal heavy episode of my experiences traveling to and from Texas, around Texas, my time at all 4 of the Texas shows, saying the word Texas quite a lot. I'm sure I'll be saying that quite a lot throughout the whole episode. And also, big part of this episode is going to be the very fun conversations I had at the meet and greets. So many meet and greets I participated in, so many fun little nuggets and conversation topics to share with you. I'll note that some of my meet and greet conversations centered around Grand Princess, since that tour occurred prior to the big show. This episode will be out after Grand Princess is over, but there won't be any Grand Princess spoilers here, so if you haven't watched that episode yet, feel free to listen to this without fear of any spoilers for Grand Princess. If you want to hear more on Grand Princess, tune into our regularly scheduled programming later this week. Friday's episode will have a full deep dive review of everything related to Grand Princess. That said, Texas was such a wonderful experience. I'm really excited to relive it a bit, share my time with all of you. So go ahead and grab your cowboy hat and your beaver nuggets, and let's jump right on in. So the Texas tour was spread out over the majority of a week. There were 2 shows in Austin on Tuesday, March 17th and Wednesday, March 18th. And then there were a couple of off days. And then there was a show in Dallas on Saturday the 21st. And then the very next day on Sunday the 22nd, a show down in Houston. So for those of you that don't know, I do mention it a little bit on the pod. I live in Southern California. I'm a big driver. Obviously, I live in Southern California. I sit in the car in traffic literally nonstop. It's a pain. But I'm a big driver. I do a lot of road trips. I grew up doing a lot of road trips. So for me to drive somewhere instead of flying is not really a big deal to me. It's not that I am afraid of flying. I've flown more than enough in my lifetime, but it's just a little bit of something that I enjoy driving. It allows me to bring my dog with me as well. So bringing that up because I drove to Texas from Southern California. I left on Saturday, the 14th, drove about 3 days. I also don't do really long stretches of days. I try to just relax and enjoy it and zen out in a little bit, enjoy the time off. But drove 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, basically coming out of California through southern Arizona, through Phoenix, through southern New Mexico, and then into Texas, through El Paso, through western Texas. If you have never driven or traveled to western Texas, in particular on Interstate 10, I don't recommend it. There is not a lot there. It is very boring. The speed limit is 80, so it's actually quite high for an interstate, but there's nothing there. It is a lot of desert. Apologies to anybody that lives in Texas or western Texas specifically, but once you leave the confines of El Paso, there is nothing for very long stretches until you get to San Antonio area. I arrived in Austin late afternoon on Monday. I did have some family that was meeting me on the trip just to spend some time together while we were in Texas. So met up with my family. Like I said, I had my dog with me too. So just kind of had a relaxing night, settled in. We did eat Torchy's Tacos. If you are unfamiliar with Texas cuisine, Torchy's Tacos is one of my favorite places to go. Every time I'm in Texas, they make amazing tacos, all different kinds. They are very, very good. They really load up the tacos too. Some of this episode is going to be about food. Fair warning. I'm a big food person, but Torchy's Tacos, highly recommend it if you are in Texas. They are branching out a little bit too around Texas, but Torchy's Tacos, had to get some of that. And then just kind of got my bearings, prepped for the next day because that was the start of the Austin events. So woke up on Tuesday. The event wasn't until later in the evening, so had a lot of downtime throughout the day, just kind of hanging around the hotel. What I ended up doing this day was watching the show from March 15th, That was the last show that TJPW ran in Japan before they came on the Texas tour. Didn't have a chance to watch it because I was on the road when it came out, but I ended up having some time here, so I watched it. I had a breakfast burrito. Love me a good breakfast burrito. It was a nice like appetizer. It really got me in the mood to watch like a TJPW show, and then just immediately following it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like ready to go and take in this TJPW show live. Ended up leaving around 4:00 to get over to night one, or I guess they called it like day one in Austin, even though it was in the evening time. Left around 4:30-ish. I had a friend that was attending a lot of these shows as well, so picked up my friend, ended up driving on over, arrived a few minutes before doors, like right around 5:30-ish. This venue was really interesting. The Palmer Events Center, it was kind of like a convention hall or like an event hall. So there was a parking garage that was right next to it, which was super convenient, super easy. It was like $12 to park, so it wasn't anything crazy. Waited in a very brief line. Doors opened around 5:45. The bell time was 7 p.m., so had a little bit of time to just like bop around and kind of take everything in. I do have to mention that everything was very smooth. This was a very smooth operation. Check-in, there was no speed bumps or hiccups with check-in. Everything was smooth. People kind of came in. The flow was really good. There was a lot of police presence around, so it felt very safe and secure both inside the venue and outside the venue. They had all of the cardboard cutouts of the ladies in the lobby, which was a really cool photo op. And I also have to say, all of the volunteers, all of the staff across all of the shows were really great. They were on their game. They were super nice, super helpful. So once inside, like I mentioned, this was like a huge exhibit hall style venue. There was a large number of chairs. It was basically like just an open floor exhibit hall, and they put all of the chairs around the ring. There must have been hundreds of chairs around the ring. So most of the seating was flat, which I happened to have front row for both of the Austin shows, but I did speak with a few people, and my friend that I was with was a couple of rows back. And that was like the one minor gripe that a few people had, was that it was a little bit difficult to see over some of the people in front of you, especially as you got into like row 5, 6, 10, 15, etc. But overall, I thought the venue was cool because you can kind of get up, walk around. You really could see the action if you were going to take like to get a drink of water, to grab a beer, to get some food. It was really easy if you wanted to buy a t-shirt. Like, it was really easy to just not miss anything as you got up. So that was kind of cool. There were a couple of bleachers opposite the hard cam. If you've watched the shows, you saw them on the video for most of the show. And then there was also a little bit of standing room, which was designed just for people with South by Southwest badges, because if you had a badge, you didn't have to actually pay for a ticket for this. So it was like included in your South by Southwest badge. They did have food. They did have drinks. There was a whole lot of snacks, your typical stuff, popcorn, things like that. There was also like I think it was like a Tex-Mex / Korean style, like build your own bowl that was there. It smelled incredible. I didn't happen to eat it. I kind of regret not forgetting it because it smelled so good. There were a couple of bars as well, so you could get like water, alcoholic drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, couple of beers. There were, of course, merchandise tables. The Megami Maids had a table of their own. I came to find out later that they were giving away like these really cute looking stickers of the TJPW ladies, and I could kick myself for not just going over, saying hello to the Megami Maids and visiting their table and kind of looking at some of these cool stickers that they had. There was an MC that was kind of working the room before we went on air. Obviously, while we were on air, Namba was the ring announcer for the show, but prior to that, Emily May was in attendance. Emily May is someone who is really hardworking in the wrestling journalism community. She was very nice to talk to. She was very friendly, very just happy to be there. But she was kind of working the room, kind of announcing the sponsors, getting everybody warmed up and ready for the show. I happened to be VIP for this day one, which included a signed poster by the entire roster, which was kind of cool. And interesting to note, Kaya Toribami, like the Kaya Toribami image, is still on the poster. It wasn't Sakura. And so I believe that she signed it as Kaya Toribami. So that was kind of a cool little unique thing to receive. VIP also came with a lanyard, of course, the front row seat, and then like slightly early entry. I think you got to go in like 15 minutes or so before general admission. Ended up buying some merch. I bought the Outlaw t-shirt, or the Most Wanted t-shirt. That one I had my eyes on. It looked really cool. I bought the tote bag as well, just because I knew I was going to be getting a lot of 8x10s, a lot of things to sign. So figured what better way to carry it all around than with the tote bag. The merchandise was really high quality. That was a pleasant surprise. Not that I expected it to be bad, but it's always nice when you go to an event and the t-shirt isn't something that, you know, the minute you put it on, you're like, oh, this is going to like immediately shrink. This was really well-made merchandise. Everybody that was working the merchandise booths, like I said, all of the volunteers and the staff were really great, really helpful. But I did happen to bump into Nicholas Tan from Tokyo Story USA, who was manning the pre-order merchandise booth. So just went up, said hello to Nicholas Tan, just said how awesome this was to be here and be a part of this. So really, really great to meet Nicholas Tan in person. He's a really great guy. He was working so hard all weekend. I ended up sitting just to the left of the hard cam in the front row. Great seats, lots of action up front. And then because this was a flat arena, a flat venue, the entrance ramp was really long. It was kind of off to one of the corners. And as you watch these shows on Wrestle Universe, you can see just the long walk that the women had to make to the ring, which was kind of cool. Like it kind of added to, some of them like kind of trotted their way down, jogged their way down. It just kind of added to the hype of each of the matches. Speaking of the matches, I thought all of them were pretty good. All of the women were really into it. It was opening night for the tour, so everybody was jazzed up and ready to go. I'm not going to go through every single match in extreme detail, but you can go ahead and listen to those shows in the archive where we break down the matches in particular and kind of how it relates to the ongoing storylines, going into Grand Princess, etc. I'll just touch really briefly around some of the things. So Namba was the one that kicked us off. Really cool to see Namba. I think the crowd kind of knew who she was. The crowd on night one was really split 50-50 TJPW fans, South by Southwest attendees. We did also get the full roster in America for the very first time of the Up Up girls. So that was really cool to see. Suzume and Uda kicked us off. Uda's American debut. Uda seemed to have a really good time on the tour. Sakura and Shino were next, the debut of Sakura Hattori. I don't think people knew that she was a new character, but really cool that they made the Texas shows feel important by debuting Sakura in Texas. There was a tag team match. Hyper Misao and Mifu Ishida took on Raku Palm. They basically played to the audience, and Misao's comedy was a little bit simplistic, just to kind of get the casual fans invested or the first-time fans invested. They wrestled all over the place. This was the match with the cardboard Tesla. I was very happy to see Raku pick up a win on the tour, so you knew I was loud and proud for that. There was another tag match. Yamashita and Arisu Endo took on Mizuki and Aino. Very hot crowd for this. This was probably the match of the night. Yuki Aino had the most streamers by far. There were not too many in the earlier matches, but Aino on day one certainly had the most streamers. We saw in the semifinal the Inspiration take on Wakana Uehara and Shoko Nakajima. I don't think the Inspiration were as recognized, but they were still over. A lot of people were booing them. It was clear that they were the kind of the bad guys in the matchup. Wakana also very over. I did mention this in the mainline episode about the Austin shows, but seeing Shoko Nakajima live is such a treat. She is so good at what she does. There is zero wasted movements. She is so fluid in the ring. It is really, really exceptional. If she happens to come to any shows near you, whether that's MLW or indie shows or TJPW, make a point to go see Shoko Nakajima. You won't be disappointed. And the main event for day one was Daydream taking on Kamiyu and Yuki Arai. Really cool to see a preview tag for the big Grand Princess main event. The crowd was super hot for these last three matches. Shino Suzuki was seconding a lot of the matches, and I happened to be wearing my Himawari shirt on this day. It was, at this point, it was the only TJPW shirt I had, even though Himawari was sadly not on the Texas tour. But Shino Suzuki happened to notice it, and she kind of pointed, and she was like, "Oh, Himawari t-shirt." And I said, yes. And then I said, bumping gritters. And she said something in Japanese, but she was like, bumping gritters. And then we both kind of said, ganbate. It was just a nice little moment during the show. After the show was the meet and greets. So I went ahead and bought a number of 8x10s. I decided to split up my meet and greets just to not overwhelm myself day to day since I was going to be attending all of the shows. So day one ended up meeting just a handful of the women. Uda Takami was the first person that I met. Uda, super sweet, super nice, adorable. She did confirm it was her first time in the United States. She said that she was super excited to be here, that everyone was really kind and nice to her. I asked her if she likes our American ice cream, and she initially said yes, but then she translated something into her phone, like using the translation app, and she held it up to me, and I ended up reading it. It said, "I have not had a chance to try ice cream in America yet." So it was only day one. I know she went on to have a number of different ice creams, but it was a fun interaction. She signed the portrait. We took a picture. She is very, very small, but everything I've heard about Uda is that she's just a ball of energy, and that certainly rang true meeting her. I also thought for someone who is like 18, I think she just turned 19 just this past weekend after the Texas tour, but I thought she carried herself very well for someone who is so young in a foreign country for the very first time, someone who is kind of small and petite, someone who could like easily get like singled out or picked on or something. I thought that she really just carried herself very well. Just a very pleasant bundle of joy to meet Uda. I also stopped by Raku. Raku is definitely one of my personal favorites. I did meet her before back in Vegas, and apparently Raku claimed to remember me. Now, it is possible that I was being worked. She is an entertainer after all, right? She does this for a living. But when I walked up to her, I said hello. And before she even said hello to me, the first thing out of her mouth was, "Second time meeting? I remember you last year." And I kind of took that and ran with it. In my defense, I was wearing the same shirt I wore in Vegas, and I look more or less the same. So it's certainly possible. We did have a nice conversation in Las Vegas, but I'm going to choose to believe it. I'm going to be a super fan. We did speak quite a bit about which of the other Texas shows I will be attending. And then she also asked if I'm going to be going back to Las Vegas again, too. Of course, I said yes to all of it, kind of a little bit embarrassed, but she said that I was a very big fan. We talked about the podcast. I said I am a big fan. I happen to do a show all about TJPW. I had a sticker with me, and she was very impressed by that. And she was like, "Oh, you have such a good voice. That's awesome." And then she's brought up her radio show that she does on X. I think it's called like Raku's Train Radio or something like that. I had heard of it before. I had listened to an episode or two, but it is all in Japanese, so hard for me to really understand what she's talking about. But nonetheless, she was excited that I was familiar with it, and she did ask if I listened to it, but I said the same thing, like, yes, I know what it is, but again, hard to understand what's going on. But Raku was a delight. I did buy a shirt from her. I really wanted to get a Raku shirt. She insisted that I wear it the next day. Raku is very talkative. She really makes an effort to have a conversation with you. Her English is surprisingly good. I didn't have any issues communicating with her. She is just a delightful person. I also met Mifu Ishida day one. This was the first time meeting Mifu. It was her wrestling debut in the US. We spoke a little bit about Los Angeles. She asked where I was from, and she said she hasn't been to Los Angeles for a number of years, so maybe she traveled once before for her ambassador duties. Mifu, someone that has terrific English. Like I said, talked a lot about LA. We talked about the other Texas shows. Just a really happy, bubbly person. Like, her English is almost up to par with Namba's English. It was just that good. And speaking of Namba, Namba was the final person that I met on day one. I was over the moon to meet Namba. She was the ring announcer when I got into TJPW, and just someone that I think embodies the spirit of what TJPW is. So I was so excited to meet her. She was incredibly kind. I told her just how excited I was that she could be here on the Texas tour. She agreed, but she did say she wasn't sure if she would be welcome back, which I think is ludicrous. But her thought was, I had graduated. I am the former ring announcer. I'm not the current ring announcer. And I said, that's right. When you graduated, it was a very sad day. And she said, yes, very, very sad day. But she didn't know if she would be welcome back. But everybody, including, I think she said she had reached out to Rise Shirai, like Everybody was just very excited for her to return, so she felt a lot better about that. I asked her if she's liking Vancouver. She said that she was very much. I asked her if it was really cold, and she said not too much this year. I did ask her about when she went up to Yellowknife. If you followed Sayuri on social media, she ended up going like almost up into the Arctic for a weekend. So we did talk about that trip that she took, and she said it was freezing cold, but a very fun experience. I did ask her if Canada is similar to Tokyo at all in terms of the weather, but she said it really hardly ever snows in Tokyo. I told her I'm from Los Angeles. She was very jealous of that. She said she wanted to return to Los Angeles soon. And then I just told her she's doing a really great job for the Vancouver shows. She admitted that it was quite a bit to take on, a little bit more difficult than she might have imagined. And then I had to tell her that her English has gotten really great over the past few years. You can have a full conversation with her. She's basically fluent. But she was very, very appreciative of that, said I was very sweet. Just truly an incredibly nice person to have a conversation with. Before we left day one, my friend and I just kind of hanging around and just taking in the last few minutes of being at the show. Uda Takami was running around to people that were lingering, handing out like her Up Girls info sheet. So she came running up to us saying, "You want Uda paper? You want Uda paper?" Had to take that. Uda, again, bundle of joy. On the way out of the venue, happened to bump into referee Mike Fullilove. Mike was the first time I met Mike. I know Mike is a friend of the show. He follows, he listens to the show. So shout out to Mike. He did one heck of a job on all three of the shows that he was on. Really cool to meet him. He had to corral a lot of like the Raku Palm shenanigans, the Hyper Misao shenanigans. So Mike, heck of a nice dude, did a really, really good job. He got really over in Austin too, which was funny. And then before leaving, Shino Suzuki also ran up to me with her info sheet. We shared another moment about the Himawari t-shirt and bumping gritters. All in all, got out of day one around like 10 at night. So for a show that started at 7, pretty tight evening. That includes the meet and greets. The lines were not very long for the meet and greets. So much so that some of the girls got to wrap early if there weren't a lot of people in their line. I really only waited for like maybe 2 people in front of me. Some of the girls I just walked right up to. You could really spend time talking with them. I think I spoke to like Namba and Raku for about 5 minutes. Mifu and Uda maybe 3 or 4 minutes. There was some guy behind me for Namba who ended up talking to her for like 10 minutes, but just because there was no one behind him, there was no one in line. Really great setting for the meet and greets, just a really fun time. Afterwards, I was hungry. Had to go to Whataburger, another Texas staple. And then after Whataburger, just kind of went back to the hotel, decompressed, made some notes, got things in order for the very next day. So the next day, Wednesday, kind of similar day, hung around the hotel, made some notes and some social content, ordered breakfast, actually kind of lunch, from this place called Bird Biscuit. I don't know if it's like a local Texas thing, but it was phenomenal, so I had to mention it here. Left a little bit earlier for this one, left around 3:30, 3:45. The show was about an hour earlier than yesterday. It started at 6 p.m. Ended up, again, going over with one of my friends, picked me up. Same deal, parking garage. Definitely a shorter line for doors on day one. Only waited like 20 minutes or so. Went in, scoped out a seat. The seats for the Austin shows were done by row, so you just purchased a first row ticket. You didn't have a specific seat, so you wanted to get in there, make sure you got a good one in your row. The crowd on day 2 was certainly more TJPW faithfuls, but there were still some South by Southwest attendees as well. Just kind of bopped around again, said hello to Nicholas Tan once more, got some concessions. Emily May was there walking around again, working the room. Today, on this day, I sat first row on the hard cam side, which was not VIP, but I didn't need the poster multiple times. Something that was cool about day 2 is that Tokyo Story hosted this thing called Girls Take the Ring, which was meant for like young teenage girls, tween age girls. I think the ages were like 8 to 12 or something like that, maybe 8 to 13. But there were these 3 young women who got in the ring with Miyu Yamashita and Arisu Endo. And Miyu and Arisu were just kind of teaching them basic stuff like running the ropes, doing a somersault, getting up on the turnbuckle and taunting. Really cool experience. I'm sure for those girls, they're making memories that'll last a really long time. But just a cool thing that was offered if you were a parent that was really into TJPW, is like maybe a nice thing to do with your daughter. And of course, I'm sure if you have a young daughter, they could easily look up to some of these women who are like strong, athletic women, no nonsense women, really great role models. So just such a really cool thing that they did. It was only on Austin day 2. A little bit of a smaller crowd on day 2. They did fill in kind of closer to the start of the show. I was wearing my Raku shirt, had to wear my Raku shirt after Raku like insisted that I do so. So when the Up Up girls came out, Raku noticed and gave me a little bit of a wave. So it paid off. It was a great moment. This show, also a pretty good show. Tag match with Arai and Mifu taking on Shino and Arisu. Hot opener for the crowd. Sakura took on Hyper Misao. Misao, a lot of fun on the mic once again. Uber Eats took on Raku Palm. Raku Palm came out in Buc-ee's onesies, and the crowd like went ballistic. They were out in front of us a couple times. Yuki Aino took on Rika Tatsumi. They were all over the venue. They really explored the space. There was popcorn involved. There was water bottles. There's all sorts of zany stuff, but that was a heck of a lot of fun to take in. Yamashita and Nakajima, best match of the tour, hands down. Incredible to see that live. They got a partial standing ovation. That was wonderful. And then the main event of this day was Miyu Watanabe and Suzume taking on Mizuki and Uda. Heavy lifting to follow up that special singles with Yamashita and Shoko, but they certainly did it. Miyu, very, very over. Miyu is 2-0 at this point, but another really strong show. They immediately segued into the meet and greets. I think they had to clear out the arena and kind of load out the ring and everything. So they actually did the meet and greets outside on like the front entrance area for the venue, which I thought was kind of weird because it was dark by this point. There were some lights out there, but just an odd, like the weather was fine, but it's just kind of an odd thing to do it outdoors. Happened to say hello to Ref Mike again. We exchanged stickers, so another shout out to Ref Mike. Also met Meerkat Ultra, very nice guy. I had heard wonderful things about Meerkat Ultra, obviously know him from his YouTube content and his very funny, very popular YouTube videos, but super professional, heck of a nice dude. So shout outs to Meerkat Ultra as well. This day met 3 of the TJPW members. Miyu Yamashita, it was my second time meeting Yamashita. Wished her a happy birthday because it was her birthday the previous day. She said her birthday was really fun. She had a very nice day. Yamashita was a little bit quiet, but I kind of chalked it up to maybe just like being exhausted from travel, her match with Shoko earlier that day. She wasn't unfriendly. She was incredibly nice, incredibly friendly. She just wasn't overly talkative. So we just kind of took our picture and that was that. After Miyu, stopped over to Shino Suzuki. First time I met Shino Suzuki, she was also a little bit quiet, definitely quieter than yesterday when we talked about the Himawari shirt, but still very nice, very happy individual. Asked me if I liked the show. We took a picture. We didn't have too much of an interaction, but it was really nice to meet Shino. And then the last person I met on day 2 was Wakana. I had met Wakana before in Las Vegas, but definitely wanted to make sure I stopped by her once again. Wakana, super talkative. I asked her if she would beat the Iconics, or the Inspiration, I suppose, at Grand Princess. And like she immediately struck the pose that they do, which was kind of funny. I asked her if she would win, and she just kind of smacked her belt a couple of times, and she said, yes, absolutely. I did ask her about the day before, day 1 of Austin, where she took the pinfall in that match. I said, hey, that was a little bit rough. And she said, no, it's all good. We will win. We will defend these belts. She asked where I was from. I told her Los Angeles, where she said she would love to go to Los Angeles someday. You know, I had to ask her what her favorite food was, and she was really thinking about it for a good 20 seconds. I'm sure it's a hard question. I'm sure she gets it a lot though, but she said, oh, like American food, American snack. I said, sure, whatever your favorite is. And she said, Cheetos. And I wasn't expecting that, but she made it abundantly clear. She said, not hot Cheetos, regular Cheetos. So Wakana, she posted a lot of pictures of Cheetos. So Wakana seems to love American Cheetos. There was also a barbecue restaurant across the way from this venue, and she kept pointing to it, and she was like, I want to go there. That's where I'm going after this. And she was like wafting in the smells of the barbecue restaurant. So I thought that was kind of funny too. I spoke with her for quite a while. The last thing that I mentioned to her was the competitive eating show that she was on Japanese TV. I talked a little bit about this in a couple of episodes, maybe a few months ago now, but it was called Dekamori Hunter, where they invite on a special guest to go head to head with a competitive eater, and they film it. They put it up on TV online. It was crazy because obviously Wakana does that almost as like a side hustle. So I mentioned it to her. I said, "Hey, I saw you on this show, Dekamori Hunter." And she was kind of surprised. She was like, "You saw that? Like, how did you watch that show?" But I said she did really, really great. And I said, "Who, you were with Yuki Arai, right?" And I was like, "Yuki Arai did like just okay." And we kind of started laughing about that. It's a heck of an interesting watch to see them. I think they ate this large like okonomiyaki, and Wakana certainly did the heavy lifting. That's why she was laughing quite a bit. Arai was kind of tapping out pretty soon. But a really fun interaction with Wakana. That was the last one for the day. Just kind of headed back to the hotel, got ready for the following day, which was going to be a travel day for me. So that would be Thursday. Just kind of packed Thursday morning, scrambled to fill out a March Madness bracket. I was a little disappointed I didn't get to spend a lot of time doing that this year, but obviously I was doing much more fun, important things in Texas. Ended up leaving late morning from Austin. That was my second time in Austin. Austin has a lot of character as a city. I do think it is a fun city to visit. They have a lot of bats there. That's like their thing. And it was also really under construction, which was a little bit of a pain to get around in, but nice time in Austin. Hit the road, 3-hour drive up, I think it was I-35, heading up towards Dallas. Pretty smooth sailing all the way, stopped at Buc-ee's. You know you had to stop at Buc-ee's. If you're unfamiliar and you keep seeing all of these things about Buc-ee's, Buc-ee's is basically this like ginormous, almost like a rest stop in a way. They don't allow trucks or truckers, so it is a little bit more like for car travelers, road trippers. They have incredibly good food, basically anything you could think of. Barbecue food, burritos, chicken tenders, fries, all sorts of candy. They're known for beef jerky. They have fudge. They have merchandise. That's why you see the onesies and everything. All kinds of drinks and slushies and ice creams, like you name it, they have it. They are massive. Some of them, they obviously have gas as well. Some of them have car washes. They are all over eastern Texas. They kind of are branching out into like Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee too. I think Virginia, the Carolinas. It's well worth it. If you are a road trip person, stop at a Buc-ee's if it's on your way. You already know I got that chopped brisket sandwich. That is like the go-to. The banana pudding at Buc-ee's is also like incredible. So that was my lunch for the day. Ended up arriving in Arlington. That's technically where the venue was for this one. Just kind of checked in, settled into the hotel. I think it was like 4 p.m. or so. I did find a cinnamon roll restaurant. I think it was called Cinnaholic. I had never seen it before. If you know what that is, definitely tell me more about it because it was phenomenal. The cinnamon roll was so good. Woke up on Friday, just kind of an off day, hung around with my family, with my dog, did some work, did some stuff for the show. Just a chill day, rest a little bit, slept in. Saturday, 21st, slept in, pretty normal morning stuff, and then ended up heading out early to get up to the Arlington show, the Dallas show. Picked up a friend of mine. You may know him, Blitzball champ Jason Ingram. Great YouTube series, great YouTube channel, I should say. Took our ride on over, met up with another one of our friends, Hendrix. Had Torchy's tacos again. You know I had to go back to it. Just kind of rode around Arlington for a little bit. We saw the big Dallas Cowboys stadium, which was like ginormous. The baseball stadium. There was a Six Flags, a water park. Really impressed with Arlington. I've been to Dallas before, but I'd never been to Arlington, which is maybe like 20, 30 minutes west of Dallas. But it was super nice, very residential, a lot of grass, just really pleasant experience in Arlington. Ended up getting to the venue around 1:30 in the afternoon. Showtime was at 3, doors were at 2, so right on time. Parked in the garage. It was like $25 to park at this one, so definitely more expensive. This was on the University of Texas Arlington campus, which was honestly beautiful. It was very nice. I'm also well aware that University of Texas Arlington is UTA, and I think UTA picked up on that too. Walked over from the garage, waited just about 15 minutes, kind of chit-chatting with some others, then went into the venue. The venue was like a mid-sized college arena. It's also where the Dallas Wings, the WNBA team, play. I think it holds like 7,000 or so. So it was like a real, like a legitimate venue. I don't want to discount the other venues, but it was like an actual, like a venue with like a bag policy, security, all that kind of stuff. Here's one of my like really minor weird gripes from this whole experience. They set up all of the merchandise, the 8x10s, the Megami maids, like right in front of the entrance door. And it just created this like very traffic jam. I don't know why they did it that way. They had access to the entire concourse. Just one minor thing that maybe they can adjust next time. Did a lap of the venue, just kind of walked the concourse. Only things on like one half of it were open, like the concession stands and stuff. But it wasn't massive. It took like maybe 2 or 3 minutes to walk around the concourse. There was one side of it that was open to the floor, so you can like see down, see the ring, the entrance stage. So that kind of got us excited as we were taking it all in. They obviously did not have the whole entire 7,000 arena, the 7,000 seat arena open up. They had the upper area closed off. They had the side by the entrance stage also closed off. Still really cool spot to have some wrestling and some TJPW wrestling. Met up with a couple of other friends of the show. Paul Darwin, met him last year in Vegas, bumped into him here. Really nice dude. Also bumped into friend of the show, the wrestling enthusiast, Eric Peralta. Eric, heck of a hardworking, very nice dude. So great to connect with him once again. So shout outs to Eric. Give him a listen. Give him a follow as well if you don't already. This show had a specialty cocktail, which was cool. I had to try that. It was like a bonsai punch, I think is what it was called. It was like pink lemonade and vodka. So it was pretty sweet, but it was also kind of tart with the lemonade. It was pretty good. I sat next to the entrance ramp for this one. So it was cool to have like different viewpoints for each of the shows. Emily May was bopping around again, working the room. She actually remembered me from Austin. So we had a pretty short, nice little conversation. Very nice person, Emily May. The crowd, not as big as the first 2 nights, but still 1,400. They were noisy. They were clapping, chanting, screaming, booing. Definitely a crowd that was familiar with TJPW. This show had Shino and Mifu going head to head, both of them pretty over. I talked about this on the show already, but Mifu, like, really growing on people. She is so charismatic. Uda and Sakura as well had a singles match. Very odd ending because this is a match where Uda was like tapping out for a really long time and they didn't ring the bell. Daisy Monkey took on Raku Palm. Cool to see Daisy Monkey team together. Very fluid with their tag team maneuvers. A lot more Buc-ee's shenanigans in this. A lot of the Gashapon shenanigans in this. Also saw Vert Vixen and Yuki Aino take on Uber Eats. Really cool to see Uber Eats so much on the tour. Vert Vixen, I think, is from Dallas, so this might have been like hometown girl support for her. The 3-way semifinal with Rika Tatsumi, Misao, and Mizuki. Certainly, I think, the match of the night, in my opinion. The crowd was so ready for the craziness that they have. They fought all over the venue with the bike. There was the chair tower. Mizuki dove off the entrance rig. Just really cool stuff. And then the main event, Miyu Watanabe, Miyu Yamashita teamed up to take on Yuki Arai and Nakajima. Arai, hands down the most streamers in Dallas. Very, very popular. Big fight feel for this. There was so many like major players here, relationships, kind of connections from 2025, from 2026. So really great main event match. The meet and greets afterwards, certainly one of the longest entrance lines just to get up to the meet and greets. They did it behind the entrance stage. And so what they did was just wrap it around the floor of the venue. Met a handful of the wrestlers on this one. Started off with Sakura Hattori. Sakura looked awesome. Like the gear close up was so cool looking. I complimented her on her gear. I said, "You look really phenomenal." And then I happened to say, "No more Kaya." And she looked at me and she shook her head. She said, no more Kaya. She was selling some merchandise though. And she only had like a little bit of merch left, but it was Kaya merch. I guess she didn't have Sakura merch made up yet. And she had like these patches that had a cartoon Kaya Toribami on it. She had one of them left. It was like literally the last piece of merch that she had left. And so after our no more Kaya exchange, she paused for a second and she went, one more Kaya. And she pointed to the patch. I thought that was really funny. Really nice person. We ended up posing with one of her hand signs. She was very reserved, a little bit quieter, kind of like in a stoic way. I think maybe that's just the character that she's playing. I never got a chance to meet Kaya, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But again, very, very lovely person. Very nice. I had a friend that was meeting Mifu Ashita, so I decided to wait in line and just say hello to her again. I said, hey, met you in Austin if you remember me, and she did. And I said, I'd like to buy one of your t-shirts. So I did purchase one of the Go Go Let's Go Ashita Mifu t-shirts. She was kind of surprised that I wanted to buy one. I was like, you're selling them, right? Like, they're on sale. But was really happy to get one of those. And then Mifu is actually someone who engages with a lot of the content I put out on social media. I think she follows me on TikTok. So I mentioned to her, like, hey, just the other day, you happen to follow the show that I do. I'm the guy that does the Tokyo Joshi pod. And she's like, oh, cool. Yeah. So I ended up giving her a sticker and just had another very pleasant interaction with her. She is just so nice. And like I said before, just really, really good English. I was going to meet Wakana once again, just to have one final conversation with her. I was going to ask her another question, but she was positioned right next to Kamiyu. And while my friend was meeting Wakana, Kamiyu just announced to everybody, because she didn't have a line, she said, okay, everybody, I'm leaving. Bye-bye. And I was like, wait, hold on. So I ran up to her, and of course she was very, very accommodating. Definitely more kind than what you would think from her gimmick. I think that maybe like her gimmick is probably her, but like cranked up to 15 maybe. So definitely she was more subdued and very just welcoming and friendly. With her, I chatted mostly about her dog, Zach. She has this adorable dog that is in a lot of her content online. And I am a big dog person. I have a dog of my own. So I said, hey, I have to tell you, I love Zach. I'm obsessed with Zach. I mentioned I watch him with her in her YouTube videos all the time, and she was just giggling. And she's like, oh, I have some Zach merchandise. She had like this acrylic stand of her and Zach. We spoke quite a bit about dogs. I showed her my dog as well. And we found out that our dogs are similar ages. They were both around 12 years old or so. And she said to me, she was like, if I can get 5 more good years out of Zach, like that would make me very happy. And I said, trust me, I get it. I want the same thing, as many years as possible. And she kind of motioned between us and she was like, you get it, dog people, like we get each other. This was like a goal of mine, to have an interaction with her about dogs almost ever since Vegas, ever since I found out about Zach. If you're a dog person, you will probably relate to this very, very well. If you're not a dog person or you're not a pet person, you might be like, that's super random. But dog people, shout out to dog people, you will know just what I got out of this interaction with Kamiyu. After Kamiyu jumped on over to Miyu Watanabe, someone who is just incredibly positive and bubbly and happy, I ended up having Miyu sign my portrait. And as she was doing that, she happened to notice the sticker that I was wearing for the show. And she was like, what the heck is this? And I told her all about the podcast that I do. I don't know if she fully understood. Miyu's English is a little bit more broken compared to some of the other ladies. But I did ask her if she wanted a sticker, and she was like so excited. She's like, oh my God, yes, I would love that. And I gave it to her, and she's like, oh, this is so kawaii. I love this. So that was super cool. I was not anticipating giving a sticker to Miyu, but the fact that she noticed it and wanted it, super, super cool. Princess of Princess Champion with my Tokyo Joshi Pod sticker definitely made my day. And that's really the whole point of these interactions, right? Is to just have a lovely face-to-face, a few minutes, and just have just a great conversation and a memorable moment. And then the final person on the Dallas trip that I met was Rika Tatsumi. Definitely wanted to hit Rika Tatsumi because she is not going to be in Vegas. Rika, very, very happy. You can kind of sense a trend here for all of these ladies. Rika's English is okay. She's not the best. But as I was interacting with her, I said, hey, what happened to your Iron Man title? She's like, very sad. I lost it. I said, oh, right, to Antonio Honda, right? And I said, are you going to win it back at the Battle Royal? And she's very confident. She said, yes, I will win it back. And I said, not Mahiro, though, right? She said, no, not Mahiro. Mahiro bad. And she gave a thumbs down, which I thought was kind of fun. I did also ask her, I said, you're going to be in some sort of like a disguise, right? Like you're in some sort of makeup. You're going to look different. And she just started laughing out loud. And I was like, what, like, great waka something or other, and she was just cracking up, and I was like, what the heck is that? Like, Nani? And she was laughing so much. She said that she enjoys a comedian. We've spoken about this on the show before, Cookie, and that he does these types of effects and makeup and stuff. She was laughing a lot. She was either really happy that I knew like the storyline for her, or she had in her mind just how ridiculous she was going to look. And she was very, very happy that I was remembering and just kind of bringing it up. But just a really nice interaction with Rika. Ended up getting out of there around 6:30, so a little bit longer, like 3.5 hours for that show, but still very palatable. Ended up going to dinner with some buddies, had a nice steak dinner, just enjoying some company, some time with friends that I don't see very often. Of course, I will see them in Las Vegas once again, but beyond that, who knows when the next time around. So just had a really nice time with friends, got back to the hotel very late and just kind of quickly packed, planned for the next day. That next day would be Sunday, so woke up like really early because had to drive down to Houston. Houston was like 3.5 hours. Interesting how they scheduled this tour to have Saturday in Dallas, Sunday in Houston. I did speak later on with a couple of staff members who had to like make the trip super late at night or super early in the morning. I don't know why they scheduled it that way. Maybe it has something to do with the venues or the cities, but that was like another just minor gripe that perhaps next year they can space out the days if it allows, if whatever venues they have allow for that. Again, had to stop at Buc-ee's on the way down to Houston, but switched it up a little bit. I got the brisket burrito this time and some banana bread. I'm a big banana person, if you can't tell. Did hit some traffic on the way down, so like checked into the hotel a little after 1 p.m., just had to like toss my stuff in the room and then just book it down to the venue. But it was a cool spot. This was post Houston, very like iconic spot downtown, outdoor parking, which I was worried about because it was very hot. But again, about $25. But this was like a converted post office, something like that. It's now a mall. So there's a lot of stores. There's a food court. The X stairs are in this like special atrium that's like a multi-purpose space. There's a lot of empty storefronts. Very easy to park, very easy to get into. I did walk in on the opposite side by accident, so I had to like cut through the entire mall. And then I was following signs and I ended up like underneath the X stairs where the production tables were. So I was like, oh shoot, I'm on the opposite side of where I need to be. Like, how the heck am I going to get over to the line? The line was like outside of the doors. Well, luckily, ran into Ref Mike one more time. So we were catching up briefly because Mike was not in Dallas and he was like, you know what, I got you, come with me. So he kind of walked me through the backstage area. So shout out to Mike for doing that. And then kind of walked me up and he was like, just wait here. You don't have to get in the line. And like, I felt uncomfortable doing that. I didn't want to just cut all of these people who have been waiting outside in the hot sun, but he was like, it's all good. Like doors are going to open in 2 minutes. It's not the end of the world. So he had me chat with some guy that was taking tickets and checking people in. I think his name was Richard, another nice dude. Nick Ton happened to walk up to the table too. So I had a really nice conversation with him one more time, just kind of chatting about the final leg of the tour. And shout outs to Nick because he did let me scan in a couple of minutes early. So shout outs to Nick and Tokyo Story. This day, I was wearing my Raku shirt once again. I had tickets on the X stairs. The X stairs were standing room only, but you could bring a bag, so I got to bring all my stuff in my tote bag this time. And I mean, it was a great seat. That ticket cost $80, and that was the best experience I had by far. They used those stairs as the entrance ramp. They wrestled on those stairs, so really, really cool experience. There's about 400 people or so here. Very loud. It echoed very well. Definitely like true TJPW fans chanting names, going nuts for everyone. From where I was like practically in the ring. I felt like I could tag in. That's how good of an experience it was. Got there, looked around, bumped into one of the guys who was working the cameras, who was at like all of the shows. So had a nice brief little conversation with him. They were working hard. Being a production person or a cameraman is a thankless job. So thank your production people. If you see somebody in the restroom or bopping around or something, just give them a compliment. It goes a long way. People never recognize them. This one started in the afternoon, 3 p.m. Namba, of course, started us off. The Up Up Girls had some technical difficulties, which they kind of had to power their way through on this one. And then again, since I was wearing my Raku shirt and because I was practically inside of the ring, Raku happened to notice it, gave me another little wave and a smile. Opened up with Vert Vixen and Yuki Aino taking on Shino, Suzuki, and Suzume. Really nice start to the show, got the crowd going. Sakura, Hattori, and Mifu Ishida were next. I did bring the Mifu Ishida shirt I bought, and I was waving it, so she was happy. She gave me a little pom-pom cheer for that. Raku and Misao also wrestled each other. I basically got involved in this match by accident because they came wrestling on the X stairs, and Misao just came walking up to me as they were fighting over the pillow, screaming something in Japanese, and had to like pull me out of the way. Incredible moment, a memorable moment that I'm going to remember for a very long time. Uber Eats took on Miyu Yamashita and Kalia Capri. Kalia, pretty good to see her. First time I've seen her since the last tour. Palm Harajuku took on Yuki Arai. Bit of an odd semifinal, but they had like cardboard cutouts involved. This was the Arai house key gachapon match. Again, Arai, most streamers of anybody in Houston. And then the main event, star-studded six-woman tag match. Mizuki, Uda Takami, and Shoko Nakajima took on Miyu Watanabe, Rika Tatsumi, and Arisu Endo. Everybody was on their game. Definitely a highlight match of the show. This meet and greet was a little bit busier. I would say that like overall, Raku had a really big line. Arai had a really big line. Miyu Watanabe had a big line. There were some shorter lines for like Miyu Yamashita, Nakajima, Misao. Sakura, Hattori didn't have too big of a line. Namba, surprisingly, didn't have too big of a line. Mifu Ishida. I think it was a lot of the people who come around to the U.S. pretty often, like your Yamashitas, your Shokos, or maybe people who just weren't doing too much of interest leading into Grand Princess, like Mifu Ishida or Sakura. Rika's line a little bit smaller too. Mizuki a little bit smaller. Palm Harajuku had a pretty solid line. Suzume had a pretty solid line. Uda for sure had a pretty big line at certain shows. Wakana, pretty big line at certain shows. So it varied show to show, and of course, varied talent to talent. But overall, I do think that all of the girls were grateful for all of the meet and greets that people wanted to meet them, take pictures, get things signed. On this Houston show, met a handful of ladies again. Started off with Palm Harajuku. Palm Harajuku is crazy, man. She asked me if I had fun, and then she happened to notice my Tokyo Joshi pod sticker, and she asked me about it. She said that she wanted one. She's like, I want one. I was like, okay, I could give you one. And she said, yeah. And I handed it over to her. And like, as I was handing it over to her, she was like really surprised. She was like, wait, this is for me? And I was like, you literally said you wanted one, Paul. Like, what? But she was super excited to get it. And she looked at it's just the logo on the sticker. And she's like, oh, P for Palm. And I was like, yep, P for Palm. She was very fun, very kooky. She ended up holding up the sticker in the photo that I took with her, which was very nice of her to do. I did ask her when she would be turning 4 years old, and she said, never, forever 3. And I said, oh, okay, forever 3. And then she looked at me and she said, you're 5. And I said, okay, I'm 5. And then she wrote the number 5 on my portrait. Just like, it feels like I stepped into a funhouse meeting Palm, but it was like a true Palm Harajuku experience. That was the first time I met Palm. I also, first time to meet Yuki Aino, went ahead and met Yuki Aino. Very kind person, a little bit quieter. Her English is pretty good though. She asked me if I had fun. That seems to be like the opener for all of them. I did ask her when she's going to challenge for the Princess of Princess title once again. And she kind of gave me this look that was like, Then she quickly pivoted and she said, there's this big match between Arai and Miyu. I'm going to watch that at Grand Princess and we'll see. I've got my eyes on it. It seemed like she knew that maybe this is not in the cards for her in the near future. So maybe asking it was like a little bit sad for her to say, I don't know. I really hope Aino gets another shot. Aino's terrific. I did also bring up her big match at Grand Princess with the Super Sentai heroes, and that really lit her up. She was like very excited. She said that she's a huge fan of Super Sentai. She was super excited for it. I also asked her about her new music that they're going to debut, and she, again, very, very excited to talk about that. Her and Haru singing on that. So I think she was happy with the interaction overall. It was a great interaction. Very nice to meet Yuki Aino. I stopped by Hyper Misao as well. I wasn't planning on meeting Misao because I had met her once before, but I threw her in at the last minute. She's very talkative, very outgoing, very fun. We only chatted a little briefly, though, not too long. I asked her about her bike because the bike broke the day before in Dallas, and it was fixed today in Houston. So I was like, what happened to your bike yesterday? Like, your bike broke. Did you get a new bike? She's like, no, not new. Fixed bike. I was like, oh, wow, they fixed that bike pretty quick. I did also bring up her Grand Princess match, and I said, you got a pretty big match ahead of you, but you have a very strong partner in Super Sasadongo Machine. She was like, yes, Sasadongo, very big, very strong. We're going to win. We're going to fight evil. I loved that she was just still in character. Very straightforward conversation. Like I said, didn't talk for too long with Misao, but again, another person who is very, very nice. And then I ended up popping over to Yuki Arai. Again, asked if I had fun. That's their opener. She asked what other shows I went to. I told her all of them, which that got a chuckle out of her. I did ask her if she was going to win at Grand Princess, just as I asked Miyu Watanabe, and she was very confident too. She said yes, and she said, I'm going to take that belt. And then she said, are you going to be in Las Vegas? And I said, yes, I'm going to be in Las Vegas too. She said, great, I'm going to win the belt and I'm going to take it to Las Vegas. And I said, okay, cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'll meet you again in Las Vegas once you have the belt. I also had to bring up the Dekamori Hunter show with Yuki Arai. She was very surprised and she gave me this look that was like, man, I can't even with that show. It was like she was so over it. She said that Wakana was awesome on it. She really did good. And then she said, but me, and she just let out this huge sigh. And I was like, no, you did okay. You did okay. And then she said, we had to eat this big okonomiyaki. And she was like motioning of it. We were talking about the size. She's like, it was this big. It was this. It was wide. And I said, I know. I saw it was just ginormous. I don't know how you did it. And she said, after a while, she's like, I couldn't. It was too crazy. I couldn't. And I said, oh, you probably needed a nap. And she started laughing. And then she said, for the next 3 years, no more okonomiyaki. I can't eat any more okonomiyaki for 3 years. So that was a really fun interaction with her. I think people probably asked her a lot about her title match. I don't think anybody asked her about that experience on Dekamori Hunter. So a nice interaction with her. She was very talkative with people, very nice. Her English isn't perfect, but she definitely makes an effort. You can see her kind of like computing what she wants to say, what you're saying to her. She definitely tries to find the right words, and she makes the interaction memorable. Kind of a weird thing, but when we took our picture, she saw the Raku shirt, and she's like, oh, Raku shirt. Let's do Raku pose. So we did the Raku salute in our picture, which was kind of random, but maybe she wanted to do something different from all of her normal poses. And then I wrapped up Houston with 2 final short meet and greets. I went back over to see Sayuri Namba. I wanted to say hello to her once again. While my friend in front of me was meeting her, Namba was positioned right next to Mifu, and Mifu didn't have anybody in her line. So we just kind of smiled and waved at each other. She obviously recognized me from buying the t-shirt. I kept it brief with Namba again. I just mentioned that I had met in Austin. I was just really excited to see her here. I did tell her that I do a podcast about TJPW, asked if I could give her a sticker, and she was like, oh, of course, yes. Wished her luck for Vancouver and the Vancouver shows, and I said, I will see you in Las Vegas. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really happy that you are still participating with TJPW. And then capped off the day with a similar last-minute stop to Raku. Wanted to just see her one more time. While I was waiting in line for Raku, ended up speaking with one of the stagehands and the volunteers. His name was Ethan. He said he does a lot of commentary for a whole host of different independents. Really nice guy. Shout outs to Ethan. He was incredibly helpful, incredibly hardworking. While we were waiting in line, he talked to Mifu quite a bit just because Mifu didn't have anybody in her line. And he ended up shouting out, and he was like, hey, have you guys purchased your Mifu Ashita t-shirts yet? And I had to look at him and then kind of locked eyes with Mifu again. And she kind of knew who I was right away. And I was like, actually, yes, I have. And I brought it with me today. And Mifu started laughing. She's like, yes, he did. He bought the shirt the other day. So this is a fun interaction. My last chat with Raku was pretty brief as well. I just said, hey, met you in Austin. She's like, yes, I remember. And said, hey, we spoke about the podcast. I wanted to know if I could give you one of the stickers. And she said, yes, of course. showed her the t-shirt that I wore and just said, this was a wonderful trip. I look forward to seeing you again in Las Vegas. She asked if I would be in Vancouver, and I said, no, unfortunately, just too much too soon between Texas and Vegas. I just can't squeeze in Vancouver. And straight face, she looked at me. She goes, oh, I thought you were a big fan. I was like, dang, man, getting guilt-tripped and gaslit by Raku. What an experience that you could only get at Texas Stampede. I'm kidding. That was a great experience with Raku. Very, very nice. On the way out, said one final goodbye to referee Mike. Again, shouts to referee Mike. Spoke a little bit more with the wrestling enthusiast Eric. Shout outs to Eric. He makes some really great content. And then gave one last farewell to Nick Tan as well. Again, huge shout out to Nick Tan, to Tokyo Story. The entire event, all of the events had to be a huge success. They worked their butts off for this. 5,500 people or so across 4 days is incredible. They sold out of merch. You have to imagine that the meet and greets were really profitable for them. It just, overall, just a terrific, terrific experience. I just went back to the hotel that night to pack, ate a little bit of Texas barbecue, had to get my barbecue fix in. We don't really have good barbecue here in Southern California. Spent some time with my family, got back pretty early to the room around like 6:30. So it was about like a 3-hour show all in all, or 3-hour day all in all. And then woke up on Monday and started traveling back to LA. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, did the reverse. Drove through Texas, drove through New Mexico, Arizona. I stopped at a couple of, I think they're fast food chains. Culver's. I had never eaten at a Culver's before. Surprisingly really good. I don't know if any of you out there know a lot about Culver's, but hit me up because Culver's was great. I also ate at something called Bush's Chicken, which I think is just a Texas thing, but it was like a fried chicken restaurant. Also surprisingly good. The ride home, a little bit more like melancholy and kind of somber. The trip is over and just kind of sitting there, again, driving through that boring stretch of Western Texas, just kind of saying, well, that's it. It's over. But truly nothing to be upset about. I had a blast. The trip was terrific. I was gone 10 days overall, like a Saturday to the following Wednesday. Like I said, has to be considered a success. I had a blast. It was so much fun attending these shows in person. I've been slowly watching them back on Wrestle Universe, just kind of reliving everything. It has been a lot of fun to record this episode. Hopefully you all enjoy this episode. I know it's a little bit different, a little bit more personal and specific and kind of random. We're talking about a lot of random stuff here, but it has been so nice to just revisit my experiences and the great food that I ate, the friends that I talked to, the old friends, the new friends that I met, all of the meet and greet experiences. Just, an A+ time from start to finish. It was just such a lovely trip. I am very excited to have a similar trip in Vegas. Maybe I'll do a similar episode like this when I go to Las Vegas. But really looking forward to that as well. So excited that TJPW will be in Las Vegas. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this episode up here. It was a little bit rambly. Like I said, I hope you all enjoyed it. So go ahead, grab some cold spray, grab your ice packs, because that brings us to the end of this month's bonus episode. Texas was so much fun. The trip flew by. I'm really looking forward to Vegas. Just a few short weeks away, to be honest with you. I enjoyed sharing my experiences with you. I hope you enjoyed listening to them. If you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. For future bonus episodes, we do rewinds, we do interviews, we'll talk about Vegas, and then of course, we also do the weekly Tokyo Joshi pod, which drops every Friday, where we cover the news, the recent shows, current events, the graduates, all that great stuff. You can follow the show on social media at Tokyo Joshi Pod. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and X. You can also drop us an email, tokyojoshipod@gmail.com. But above all else, remember to keep your hearts burning, stay magical, my friends, and we'll see you next time on the Tokyo Joshi Pod.